The Senate will come to order. I ask everyone to please rise and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The Reverend Joy Howard, Executive Pastor at Sweet Pilgrim Missionary Baptist Church here in Albany, New York, will deliver today's invocation. Reverend.
Most holy and gracious Father, first and foremost, God, we want to thank you for giving us this beautiful day. Lord God, we thank you for allowing us to gather together, oh God, in this chamber, oh God. Lord God, I thank you for an opportunity, oh God, to just put this blessing upon today's session. Lord God, we thank you for the women of distinction, oh God. We thank you for this space that will allow women to be highlighted, oh God, as pillars of strength and love through their community. Lord God, we thank you for what will take place. We pray right now in the name of Jesus that you'll continue to reign on us with your peace and your love and security. And we thank you, oh God, for how you will allow today's session to be a blessing to all those throughout our state, oh God. We thank you for this session. We thank you for the senators, oh God. We thank you for the decisions that are made. We thank you right now that you are in command of all of it, for you have orchestrated this day. It is in Jesus' name I pray, amen.
Reading of the Journal.
In Senate, Monday, May 12, 2025, the Senate met pursuant to adjournment. The Journal of Friday, May 9, 2025, was read and approved. On motion, the Senate adjourned.
Without objection, the Journal stands approved as read. Presentations of petitions, messages from the Assembly. Secretary will read.
Senator Jackson moves to discharge from the Committee on Civil Service and Pensions Assembly Bill number 2123A and substituted for the identical Senate Bill 1165A, third reading calendar 554.
So ordered. Messages from the Governor, reports of standing committees, reports of select committees, communications and reports from state officers, motions and resolutions. Senator Liu.
I move to adopt the resolution calendar with the exception of Resolution 989.
All those in favor of adopting the resolution calendar with the exception of Resolution 989, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The resolution calendar is adopted. Senator Liu.
Please recognize Senator Fernandez for an introduction.
Senator Fernandez for an introduction.
Thank you so much, Madam President. I'm honored to give this introduction and recognition to some dear friends, advocates, and great New Yorkers today in Albany with my colleague in the State Assembly representing the 80th Assembly District. We celebrated Yemeni Heritage Day. First time ever we're doing so in our state's capital, and long overdue, because for the last 10 years of my career, of the Bronx's growth, the Yemeni community, including in Brooklyn, has done amazing things for New York City. And today we have guests from the community, from the Bronx. We're from the Yemen American Merchant Association. We have Zaid Nagy. And from the American Yemen Business Association, we have founders Yahya Obeid and Labib Nasser. So I recognize my individuals today because this is a stepping stone into again showing the growth of New York, the amazing contributions of this community to our state and to our country, and the potential that exists, the examples that have been set forward as to how you can coalesce community, grow businesses, become a new beacon of economic growth in places like the Bronx, home of now Little Yemen. It's on Google Maps, you will find it there, and we're making strides to make sure that it can be a recognized cultural district. But the Yemen community is much like all of ours, with a lifetime of strength and strife and fighting for independence and rights. They have really made their mark in proving to be a community that has endured, but that is supportive of one another, that has faced struggles, but has been able to celebrate in great successes. So I am so honored that we have been able to start a new tradition in Albany, and I thank my friends for coming out here today, and I hope that we can all welcome them to the floor of the chambers. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Fernandez. To our guests from the Yemeni American community, we welcome you on behalf of the Senate. We extend to you the privileges and courtesies of the House. We will rise and grant you courtesies. Senator Liu.
Madam President, please take up Resolution 989 by Leader Stuart Cousins. Read the resolution in title only and recognize Senator Webb.
The Secretary will read.
Resolution 989 by Senator Stuart Cousins, congratulating the 2025 New York State Senate Women of Distinction.
Senator Webb on the resolution.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise proudly today as the chair of Women's Issues in the Senate with the distinct honor of recognizing the incredible and remarkable women being celebrated as our 2025 New York State Senate Women of Distinction. Each year, this program reminds us of the extraordinary women whose leadership, service, and accomplishments have not only elevated our communities, but have enriched the fabric of life across our great state. Since its creation in 1998, the Women of Distinction program has stood as a beacon, shining a light on women whose work may too often, quite frankly, go unrecognized, but they do the work because they genuinely care about our communities. And their impact is deeply felt by all who have had the privilege to know them. Our honorees come from every region of our great state, every profession, every walk of life, and they bring with them diverse stories of dedication, compassion, and excellence. They are educators, advocates, entrepreneurs, caregivers, artists, and public servants, and so many more titles, often that are unpaid, but most certainly are impactful. Some are quiet forces for change, others are bold trailblazers. But all of them share one essential truth: they have and continue to make a difference. And they lift up others, and they have lifted all of us up. At a time when our state and our nation continues to reckon with issues of equity and inclusion, and even grappling with even using the term women and writing women out of our history books, these women show us what resilience, compassion, and true leadership looks like in human form. They have broken barriers, redefined what's possible, and created new pathways so that all may thrive. What distinguishes this year's Women of Distinction cohort is not only their individual accomplishments, but their unwavering commitment to the common good. Whether by leading grassroots organizations, or mentoring the next generation, or advocating for those who are often rendered voiceless, they remind us that leadership is not about titles, but in fact, it is about impact. So today, let us not only celebrate these women, let us learn from them. Let us carry their stories and their lessons into the work that we do right here in this chamber. And let us ensure that their examples continue to inspire future generations of women and girls across the Empire State. I proudly vote aye, and also now, Madam President, it is my privilege and honor, personal honor, to recognize an extraordinary woman from my district, Ms. Denise Crystalia Detlier Lee, also known as Ms. Lee, as the 2025 Woman of Distinction from Senate District 52. She is a proud graduate of Cornell University, class of 1973, where she earned a Bachelor's of Science in Child Development and Family Studies, and her journey didn't stop there. She went on and continued her education, earning several other master's degrees, and her learning was not confined to a classroom nor her teaching. For nearly 50 years, Ms. Lee has poured her heart and soul into the children of the Ithaca City School District, where she began her career at Central Elementary School, now Beverly J. Martin Elementary School, and has served in numerous capacities across the district. Her presence in the classroom has been one of excellence, stability, compassion, and a beacon for a generation of students. She has earned countless honors, including the New York State African Studies Association Educators Award, the Africana Studies Center Cornell University Recognition Award, the Tompkins County Human Rights Commission honor, and most recently, her image was entered into a mural at Beverly J. Martin Elementary School, a permanent and well-deserved tribute to her legacy. Ms. Lee is also a proud member, like myself, of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated and the Eastern Stars of New York, an organization. Both organizations are rooted in service, leadership, and sisterhood. Lastly, Madam President, Ms. Lee lives by the principles of each one teach one and reach back and pull someone up. And she is the very embodiment of those ideals. Her life and work remind us that when one person commits themselves to fully servicing others, they can transform a community. Please join me in applauding Ms. Lee and all of our 2025 Women of Distinction honorees for their lifelong commitment and continued efforts to make our state better. They are all shining examples of what it means to lead with love, strength, and purpose. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much, Senator Webb. Senator Helming on the resolution.
Thank you, Madam President. As I have the honor of standing up today to celebrate women of distinction from across our state, I can't help but think that all of us are here because at some point in our history, a brave woman stood up. I've talked often about Susan B. Anthony, who stood up for the women's voting rights. Her trial and her subsequent conviction for voting illegally as a woman took place in the Ontario County Courthouse within my district. Also in my district, Elizabeth Blackwell was the first woman in America to receive a medical degree. It was at Geneva Medical College, the precursor to Hobart and William Smith Colleges, where there is now a beautiful bronze statue of Dr. Blackwell. When I was reading about Dr. Blackwell, some of the historians had written that Elizabeth Blackwell's acceptance letter was intended as a joke. But guess who had the last laugh? Dr. Blackwell. She became a pioneer in preventive medicine and forged the path for women in medicine. Also in my district, a little bit down the road from the Ontario County Courthouse in Dansville, Livingston County, Clara Barton founded the American Red Cross. During the Civil War, Clara was one of the first volunteers to care for wounded soldiers. She earned the nickname Angel of the Battlefield for risking her life to deliver supplies and support to soldiers on the field. My honoree this year is Karen DeWar, and she names Clara Barton one of her inspirations. Karen is the Director of Emergency Medical Services for Livingston County. She said her longtime career as both an RN and an EMT was also inspired by her mother, who was one of the first female EMTs in the Geneseo Fire Department. As I mentioned these first, I think we should all recognize that we don't have to look into the history books for examples of women breaking ground or shattering those glass ceilings. Sometimes we just need to look right around us. At a press conference I held last Friday, I stood with two women who recently made history in my district. Christine Callanan, the first woman elected district attorney in Wayne County, and Ashley Williams, the first woman elected district attorney in Livingston County. And as cool as it is to make history, these women, past and present, I've mentioned today, they didn't seek to make history. They sought to make a difference. And I think the same is true for this year's Women of Distinction. We celebrate them, and we celebrate all women making a difference in our communities, inspiring all of us and the next generation of female leaders in our state. Excelsior, ever upward, New York's motto and the spirit that's embodied by each of this year's honoree. So in closing, Madam President, we are all here, women especially, but men too, because throughout our history, and indeed every single day, women are standing up. And guess what? We have no plans to sit down. Yeah. On behalf of our Republican conference, thank you and congratulations to all of our Women of Distinction honorees. Madam President, I proudly support this resolution.
Thank you, Senator Helming. To our guests, the many women of distinction honored by the Senate this year, we welcome you on behalf of the Senate. We extend to you the privileges and courtesies of the House. Please rise and be recognized. The question is on the resolution. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The resolution is adopted. Senator Liu.
Madam President, a special guest has joined us today, former Senator Betty Little. Please welcome Senator Little back to the chamber.
Senator Little, please rise and be recognized. Thank you, Senator Little, a wonderful colleague. We're so pleased to have you back. Thank you for joining us today. Senator Liu.
Madam President, please have Senator May with an introduction.
Senator May for an introduction.
Thank you, Madam President. About 25 years ago, I started having a bunch of worrisome symptoms, including headaches and joint aches and trouble sleeping and occasionally fuzziness in my head, and doctors had no idea what to make of it. But eventually, the diagnosis coalesced into a single diagnosis called fibromyalgia. Many people suffer from fibromyalgia. I'm fortunate that mine seems to be in remission, but a lot of people experience fibromyalgia as a chronic illness. Because most people who suffer from fibromyalgia are women of a certain age, for a very long time, doctors would tell us it was all in our minds. They would dismiss these symptoms. But that is no longer true because of the work of organizations like the Fibromyalgia Task Force of New York State. They have been working for years to raise awareness about fibromyalgia and to promote treatments and cures for it, including working toward the vision of creating a center of excellence for fibromyalgia here in the Capital District. We're joined by 6 people from the Fibromyalgia Task Force. Because we're so rich in guests right now, they are not in the chamber, they're out in the lobby, but I want to introduce them in any case. Dr. Sue Shipe, Mr. Brian Hart, Ms. Erica Shipe, Ms. Lisa Nelson, Ms. Minda Conroe, and Ms. Julia Valentine, and I hope that we can at least acknowledge the important work that they do. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator May. So that they can hear us out in the lobby, we'll give them a roaring round of applause. Senator Liu.
Mr. President, please recognize Senator Webb for an introduction.
Senator Webb for an introduction.
Oh, they had this resolution. Thank you, Mr. President. I rise proudly again, and folks may be wondering why there's a lot of red in the chamber today. It is because today is Delta Day here in the Capitol, and I'm so elated because my sorority, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, is here advocating and continuing the great work that we do as an organization internationally and nationally. And so a little bit about Delta and my special guests that are here today. For those who may not be familiar with our great sorority, founded in 1913 by 22 visionary women on the campus of Howard University, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated has committed itself to promoting academic excellence, providing scholarships, supporting the underserved, and actively participating in the establishment of positive public policy. Their relentless dedication to educating and promoting participation in our democracy and addressing community issues through thoughtful solutions has been instrumental and continues to be instrumental in fostering social change. The annual Delta Days, which was established by the National Social Action Commission in 1989, symbolizes the sorority's proactive engagement in the national public policy making process. It is a time when members from across the great state of ours and our state capital underscores the significance of collective action and civic engagement in advancing the well-being of our communities. With over 350,000 members worldwide, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated implements its mission through a 5-point programmatic thrust addressing economic development, educational development, international awareness and involvement, physical and mental health, and political awareness and involvement. The impact of these initiatives is a testament to the power of unity and dedication in creating sustainable change. The legacy of this great organization is also marked by distinguished leaders like Dorothy Height, who was a beacon of civil rights and whose leadership and advocacy has paved the way for future generations. As a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, I am continually inspired by the examples of these dynamic women and the countless members, including New Yorkers like the late United States Representative and former New York State Assembly member Shirley Chisholm, who have used their voices and platforms to advocate for justice and equality. In recognizing this important day at the Capitol, it is not only a recognition of the sorority's past and present achievements, but also a commitment to future endeavors. It reaffirms our dedication to the principles of service, leadership, and advocacy that Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated embodies. And so, in acknowledging my special guests today in the vital role that they play, it is my hope that we will continue to work together to foster community well-being, advocate for social justice, and empower individuals to lead and to serve. And I am profoundly grateful to our Senate Majority Leader for her continued support. I thank my colleagues for your support of this great organization. Mr. President, please extend privileges of the floor to my distinct guests, the Sisters of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Webb. To the Deltas, I welcome you on behalf of our Senate. We extend to you the privileges and courtesies of this House. Please rise and be recognized. Senator Liu.
Mr. President, please take up previously adopted Resolution 523 by Senator Fernandez. Read the resolution title only and recognize Senator Fernandez.
Secretary will read.
Resolution 523 by Senator Fernandez, memorializing Governor Kathy Hochul to proclaim May 12 through 18, 2025 as Prevention Week in the state of New York.
Senator Fernandez on the resolution.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. Yesterday, we passed a bill to make May 9th Opioid Awareness Day, and this week I'm so proud that we could pass a resolution to recognize Prevention Week. As we know, there is a crisis in New York with substance use and with overdoses and ultimately too many deaths. And to have this week is so important because it really stabilizes the work that we do. It keeps us aware of what is the issue and what we can do, and the many ways that we can do something to prevent abusive drug use and to prevent deaths, ultimately. Today, I was so fortunate to have I hosted students from all over the state, from everybody's district, and these students are doing just that. They're coming up here, they're speaking on behalf of their loved ones, of people they don't know, but speaking on the crisis that is about how we can prevent deaths and overdose. And it was inspiring to hear from my colleagues. Thank you for those that came to visit the students. But more so inspiring from the students that see it themselves, what is happening and what we can do, and how brave we need to be to speak on this topic. We spoke of many different moments in history. I was mentioning how hard it must have been for the first conversation to say, let's give clean needles to people that are using so they don't get diseases and they don't die. I'm sure that's still controversial to many people, but it was an act of bravery and courage at that moment to speak up, to say that this is a tool that will keep people alive and it will prevent diseases from spreading. It was another enlightening moment to talk about ideas of what more we can do to prevent death and to prevent abuse. And I am just so enthralled that we have young people that see it now, that are willing to come up here to speak to us and to be agents of change. And all of us can be agents of change, whether you are in the fight, doing the research and advocating on the cause, or you're there for somebody that is struggling with the law after losing someone, or you're there to hear someone in their time of despair. There are so many ways that we can prevent the worst, and we must take every way, whether it's putting curriculum to have education be a part of prevention, letting our young people know what is out there, what are the risks, and having systems in place to reduce harm, to reduce deaths, to stop deaths. It's also important, and I'm so grateful that we are able to do this in its actual, week. Sometimes resolutions don't fall on the day that we do it, but more grateful for the students that came up here, and please all say hello to them because they are fighters of change, agents of what we can do, and I'm grateful for their support and yours on this resolution to continue to change the future and to fight the crisis, fight overdoses, and prevent every single death. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Fernandez. To our guests, I welcome you on behalf of the Senate. We extend to you the privileges and courtesies of this House. Please rise and be recognized. The resolution was adopted on March 25th. Senator Liu.
Mr. President, please take up previously adopted Resolution 142 by Senator Gallivan and read the resolution title only and recognize Senator Gallivan.
The Secretary will read.
Resolution 142 by Senator Gallivan, memorializing Governor Kathy Hochul to proclaim May 11th through 17th, 2025 as Police Week in the state of New York.
Senator Gallivan on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. I very proudly rise today in support of Police Week in New York State and across the country. As many of you know, my background's in law enforcement. I came from a law enforcement family where so many were willing to stand up for their community as so many others are across our state and across our nation. In 1962, this week was set aside and recognized as Police Week in the United States as a time to recognize those law enforcement officers who've lost their lives in the line of duty. Many of us attended ceremonies just last week to recognize officers across New York State who gave their lives in service to their fellow New Yorkers. It's a reminder, of course, of the dangers police officers face every single day. But despite this risk, despite the challenges of the job, the challenges of our time, despite the emotional toll they and their families often face, there are still roughly 900,000 law enforcement officers across New York State and across the country serving their communities. Let's take a moment, Mr. President, to thank all who serve as we honor and remember those who have fallen. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Gallivan. Senator Rollison on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I want to thank my colleague and retired member of law enforcement like myself, Senator Gallivan, to recognize this week, and May 15th is actually Police Officers Memorial Day here in the country. I want to talk about three individuals from this state who lost their lives going back to 1983, when I was first on the job. The very first police funeral I attended was in East Meadow, Long Island, for P.O. James Rowley of NYPD Aviation. He and his partner patrolling the East River and became involved in a collision with a seaplane out of New Jersey. They crashed into the borough of Brooklyn in the Red Hook section, and they both lost their lives. I remember going to that funeral, wide-eyed, wondering what it was going to be like. Of course, I saw them on TV as a young man growing up. But to be there in that quote-unquote sea of blue was something that I have never forgotten. And I have never forgotten every single funeral after that. And unfortunately, there were many. I was assigned to the Honor Guard unit of the Town of Poughkeepsie Police Department, and we traveled the tri-state area to pay our respects. And I will say, of course, the majority were members of the NYPD. I retired in 2008, and then 3 years later, we lost a member of the City of Poughkeepsie Police Department, where I've lived for 35 years. And that's Police Officer John Falcone, who was killed in the line of duty in a domestic violence incident by the Poughkeepsie train station right after lunchtime during the week. And I traveled to Carmel, New York, in Putnam County, where he grew up, to attend his funeral. And again, thousands of police officers from the tri-state area were there to pay respects to John. And then the last police funeral I attended was in 2022 for P.O. Jason Rivera. He and his partner from the NYPD were killed in the line of duty on January 25th of that year, responding to a domestic violence incident. And that was in front of St. Patrick's Cathedral. Thousands upon thousands of police officers were there. I dare say the largest motorcycle escort I have ever seen in my life, in the pouring rain for Jason Rivera and his family. And what made that special that day was that my son, Christopher, attended that funeral with me and the members of the Newcastle Police Department, where he serves as a sergeant. And in closing, Mr. President, we honor the members of our law enforcement community who went out that door to protect us, who did not come back. But in that home or that apartment, behind that door is a family that saw them leave but did not see them come back. And we need to pray for the lost. We also need to pray for the current members of our police community who are doing that job. And unfortunately, we'll be having this conversation again next year during Police Week, because we will continue to lose police officers in a very, very difficult and dangerous job. So when we think about the members that have come to serve and who have not come home, let's remember their families, who really make a sacrifice for us as a community to give their loved ones to our communities to protect us. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Borrello on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank the sponsor, Senator Galvin, for bringing this forward and associate myself with his comments, and also Senator Rollison. I rise today to recognize and remember the Genesee County Sheriff's Deputy, Sergeant Thomas Sanfratello, who lost his life last year while on duty at Batavia Downs with two unruly patrons. He succumbed to his injuries from that fight. This is a dangerous job, folks, and it gets more and more dangerous, not less. We need to remember that. Less and less people want to do this job as a result. We need people in law enforcement. And today, we recognize those who lost their lives and gave their lives to protect others. God bless Sergeant Sanfratello and all who serve. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Chan on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. Having been a police officer and a police supervisor for 27 years myself, I've experienced too many wakes and funerals of my fellow officers. The last one that hit home really, really hard, and I got up close and personal to it, very personal, as Detective Win-Jun Liu of the NYPD about 10 years ago when he was assassinated along with his partner, Detective Rafael Ramos. In the first hours after his assassination, I was in Detective Win-Jun Liu's house with his parents. Subsequently, I spent weeks, months, and years with those two folks, those two fine folks. And even today, just last week, I represented them, the family of Detective Win-Jun Liu, in attending our memorial service for the police officers here. In the first days after he died, I was the one, and nobody knows this, I was the one that brought food to his family every day. But you know what? Nobody can eat it. I can't remember the Lius eating a single bite of food for 10 days, 15 days. I had to make them eat it. I saw his wife, his widow, his parents losing their only kid, and that one hit home especially hard for me, and I've witnessed dozens of hours at 9/11. I lost friends. I lost firemen friends as well, other first responders. So, but Detective Win-Jun Liu really hit home, and it is, I guess, a blessing that modern medicine was able to bring a child to his family after his death. And today I watch Angelina grow up, and I'm just in awe every day, in contact with the family. And they come up here often too, Mr. and Mrs. Liu. So I want to thank Senator Gallivan for bringing forth this resolution. I want to thank Senators Rawlinson and Senator Borrello for speaking on behalf and support, and I support this resolution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Casaneri Fitzpatrick on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to thank the sponsor for bringing this resolution to the floor, because as you said, it's important that we stop and think about those who have given the ultimate sacrifice for our well-being. I want to just remember Officer Stephen McDonald, who lived in my district and was a dear friend. He was shot, paralyzed, and lived for 30 years as a paraplegic in a wheelchair. He made such great use of his 30 years after he was shot, preaching forgiveness, preaching and speaking to many police officers about suicide, and making sure that they knew that if their worst day was getting them down, to think of him and to have hope that there is purpose in your life, and to continue and not to succumb to those thoughts. What I think is even more remarkable is that his son, Connor McDonald, even though he watched his dad and only knew his dad in that wheelchair, became an NYPD officer and is now a captain. And he's also my constituent and a dear friend. The McDonald family is truly inspirational and shows us what you can do in the face of great adversity and continue to give service to your community. And they have never lost their faith to know that there was purpose in what they had to deal with. And they've always been somebody that inspires me to continue. So thank you, Mr. President, for allowing me to speak about the McDonald family.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Scarcella-Spanton on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Senator Gallivan, for introducing this important resolution in support of National Police Week. You know, just last week, so many of us were at the police memorial. I have the honor and privilege of speaking at that memorial every year on behalf of the Senate. And I always make sure that when I look out, I look at the families' faces. I think one year we saw a woman there who lost her husband in a line of duty accident, who was about 9 months pregnant at the memorial. It's devastating to see the impacts on these families, and this is a really hard job. I have family who are on the NYPD, and whether it's 9/11 related illnesses, line of duty deaths, or just accidents, we want to make sure that we always honor their service. And we actually had, between accidents and 9/11 related illnesses, 17 names on that were going up on the memorial last week from on or around my district. Both Senator Lanza and I think, probably share a lot of constituents who went up on that wall. Most importantly, I'd like to mention Port Authority Police Officer Anthony Vivaro, who was killed by a wrong-way driver while he was on his way to work. Every single one of you were so incredibly instrumental in helping to get his family the benefits that they deserved last year. And I look out and I got to see his widow, who has 4 children that he left behind, and they are really a testament of strength and what an NYPD family looks like. So thank you, and I proudly vote aye.
Thank you, Senator. The resolution was adopted on January 14th. Senator Liu.
Mr. President, please take up previously adopted Resolution 106 by Senator Prasad. Read the resolution title only and recognize Senator Prasad.
Secretary will read.
Resolution 106 by Senator Prasad, memorializing Governor Kathy Hochul to proclaim May 12th through 18th, 2025 as Poverty Awareness Week in the state of New York.
Senator Prasad on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. This week, we will be acknowledging Period Poverty Awareness Week. And many of you have heard me speak of period poverty on this floor over the past number of years. And each year, I've been hosting a webinar to inform the community about what period poverty is and what we should do. Too often, people are not aware of period poverty. Period poverty is something that happens in the United States and across the world, but it's something that should not be happening. Every day, there are people who are in need of period products or menstrual products who are unable to afford it. And because they're unable to afford it, we have students not attending school because they can't. We have people going to school and not being able to go out for lunch because they have to sit in their seat all day because they're afraid that if they get up, what may be showing on their clothing. This is something that should not happen. How do we eliminate period poverty in the United States? We talk about our country being such a rich country. We talk about us being a powerful place for everything, but we cannot afford to give people who are in need of period products the products that they need. How sad is that? When we look at ourselves, we should be ashamed. No student should have to stay home from going to school because they cannot have a pad or a tampon to use, or a number of them to use. Over the years, I've had legislation passed where we've allowed for people who are incarcerated to have those products because they too were being denied those products. Think of it, somebody who's locked away and being told they are, and I'm going to be graphic, they are having their menstrual cycle and they're being told they cannot be given a product to use. They have to sit in the blood that they're sitting in because someone thinks that giving them that product means that we're giving someone something for free. Everyone in here came from a person who had to menstruate before they can have us. So we should think about that when we try to deny these products to people. A menstrual product should not be denied to anyone. I encourage my colleagues in your districts to have these conversations. Encourage people to have period product drives and distribute them to like what I do. We will be hosting our webinar tomorrow where we were talking about it. We have young kids who will be on that webinar talking about their experiences and why they were unable to attend school. We were talking about young people who were sitting there, they were not going to be playing sports after school because they cannot, because they do not have the products. Encourage people in your communities to have period product drives and please distribute them because no one should have to curtail activities because they do not have access to period products. Period products should be made available to everyone in every place across this state, and we should be that example. Again, we talk of ourselves as being a great state, a great country, but we have people in our country and in our state that cannot have a basic item such as a period product. Please, think about it. When you go to the store this week, just buy a product and donate it to someone. Take it to the library and give it to the library and tell them to give it to someone who comes in there. That's all it takes. It takes each of us making that decision to work to eliminate that problem. Thank you, Mr. Leader. I vote aye. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Prasad. Senator Webb on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to, of course, thank Senator Prasad for her continued advocacy and most certainly her unapologetic advocacy for this very important issue. As she mentioned, she's always doing webinars to lift up just how pervasive this issue is, and it impacts everyone across our great state. And I'm incredibly proud of the championing that she has done, but also the work that we've done in this chamber to address and continue to shine a light on this important issue. We have passed several bills in our House with respect to trying to mitigate or eliminate period poverty. I just wanted to share a couple of statistics that are relegated to New York to further underscore what the great words that Senator Prasad shared and call to action. For far too many women and girls, the cost of period supplies creates significant barriers to attending school, going to work, and fully participating in their daily lives. Here in New York, a month's supply of period products costs $15.56, the highest in the nation. People who menstruate in New York will spend, on average, more than $7,282 over the course of their lifetime on period products. And we know it's not just about the cost. We know that 1 in 3 low-income women in the U.S. have either missed school, work, or social outings due to lack of access to these supplies. This is about making sure that people have their basic needs not only met, but equitably addressed. It is far beyond time for us to eliminate period poverty, the embarrassment that comes with it, and to ultimately remove resource barriers that continue to add to this disparity. I am deeply grateful to Senator Prasad for bringing forward this resolution, and I want to encourage all of us to take a stand for equity to ensure that no woman or girl or any person who is experiencing their menstrual cycle here in the state of New York should ever have to miss school or work because of period poverty. This resolution serves as an important step towards ending the cycle of stigma and inaccessibility. Period poverty is a real challenge, but together we can make strides to ensure that dignity, equity, fairness for all menstruating individuals is achieved. I proudly vote aye, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Hinchey on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to also thank the sponsor of this resolution for bringing it forward and for, with just this sheer effort, helping to destigmatize this conversation. I know for me, growing up in high school, this conversation was an embarrassing conversation to have. It was one that people shied away from actively. And I want to take this moment to actually uplift an organization in my district, the TMI Project, which is actually a group of students in Kingston High School who are actively working not just to destigmatize the conversation around periods in our communities, but to also ensure that people have access to the products that they need. That is the grassroots work that we are all working to support. This chamber has done, as my colleague has said, has done a lot of work in not just repealing things like the pink tax, which was an additional cost on women and people who menstruate, but also making sure that these products are available in our schools, now in our SUNY system, and hopefully soon in all of our public buildings. But yet there are still schools that are not abiding by the 2016 law that we passed in this chamber almost a decade ago. We have to uplift the organizations like the TMI Project that we each have in our district to make sure that our schools are actually providing the products that they need to be providing to everyone who goes into our school system. I thank the sponsor again for bringing forward this resolution, and I thank all of our colleagues in this chamber for supporting the bills that we continue to bring forward to make sure that we can, one, remove the stigma and make sure that no one has to worry about what the day may bring, and that they can live a life with equity and positivity in our communities. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Hinchey. The resolution was adopted on January 14th. Before I recognize Senator Liu, let me recognize Senator Adabo, Senator Chan, and Senator Oberacker, who are all celebrating their birthdays today. Senator Liu.
Mr. President, at the request of the sponsors, the resolutions are open for co-sponsorship.
The resolutions are open for co-sponsorship. Should you choose not to be a co-sponsor on a resolution, please notify the desk. Senator Liu.
Mr. President, on page 36, I offer the following amendments to calendar number 776, Senate Bill number 7416, and ask that said bill retain its place on third reading calendar.
The amendments are received and the bill will retain its place on the third reading calendar. Senator Liu.
Please take up the reading of the calendar.
The Secretary will read.
Calendar number 169, Senate Print 871 by Senator Bailey, enactment of the public housing law.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this act shall take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Gianaris Kruger, Ort, Stewart-Cousins, White.
Announce the results.
Ayes 57.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 182, Senate Print 1985 by Senator Harkin, enactment of the criminal procedure law.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this act shall take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Gianaris Kruger, Ort, Stewart-Cousins, White.
Senator Borrello to explain his vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. Here's the issue for me. Unfortunately, thanks to bail reform, we release the domestic abusers with an appearance ticket. We're going to seize the weapons. Sounds like a good idea, except this bill has a flaw. And that flaw is that the victim's firearm can also be seized. So we're going to release the criminal and also take the weapon away from the abused. That's a problem. We should just be putting the criminals in jail where they belong, not releasing them, and then we don't have to worry about that. So I'll be voting no. Thank you.
Senator Borrello to record it in the negative. Announce the results.
In relation to calendar 182, voted in the negative are Senators Ashby, Canzone Fitzpatrick, Chan, Gallivan, Griffo, Helming, Senator Borrello, Lanza, Matera, Murray, Oberacker, O'Mara, Palumbo, Rhodes, Rawlson, Steck, Tedisco, Walzett, Weber, and White. Ayes 37, nays. Excuse me, Senator. Ayes 37, nays 20.
The bill has passed.
Calendar number 222, Senate Print 161 by Senator Ramos, enactment of the education law.
Read the last section.
Section 5, this act shall take effect April 1st, 2026.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Gianaris Kruger, Ort, Stewart-Cousins, White.
Announce the results.
In relation to calendar 222, voted in the negative, Senator Walzett. Ayes 56, nays 1.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 254, Senate Print 156 by Senator Salazar, enactment of the executive law.
Read the last section.
Section 3, this act shall take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Gianaris Kruger, Ort, Stewart-Cousins, White.
Senator Salazar to explain her vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. In addition to trauma and loss, the financial impact that a crime can have on survivors only exacerbates hardship. From funeral and burial expenses, lost wages, healthcare costs, relocation costs for stalking victims, to the need to replace essential personal property, the monetary burdens can be overwhelming and can jeopardize a victim's recovery. Together, we've taken steps to provide hundreds of thousands of crime victims and survivors with critical support to help ensure their long-term health, safety, and well-being. For example, New York is the only state in the nation that does not impose a legal limit on reimbursement for medical bills or counseling for those who qualify, which ideally allows survivors to receive that form of support for as long as they might need it. However, crime victims still face obstacles when it comes to victim compensation. Victims who suffer physical injury or who lose personal property, for example, as a result of a crime, may be reimbursed for their loss only up to a total of $2,500 under current law. An arbitrary cap like this is simply inadequate in the case of many crime survivors. Additionally, for the property to be reimbursable at all under current law, it must be deemed necessary and essential to the health, safety, and welfare of the victim. This makes it difficult for the Office of Victim Services to properly compensate these victims, as current law does not provide a definition for what that constitutes. Today, we are once again taking this step to increase the compensation that a crime survivor could qualify for and to clarify examples of what property could be necessary and essential for the welfare of a victim.
Thank you to my colleagues for your support in seeking to provide crime victims and survivors with tools that they need to recover and to rebuild their lives. I vote aye.
Senator Salazar to be recorded in the affirmative. Announce the results.
Ayes 57.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 256, Senate Print 4.
Bill will be laid aside.
Got you. All right. Calendar number 381, Senate Print 2288 by Senator Webb, enact to amend the executive law.
Read the last section.
Section 6, this action take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Giannaris Kruger, Ort, Stewart Cousins White.
Senator Webb to explain her vote.
I rise, Mr. President, for the last time today. But it's for a very important reason. To explain my vote with regards to my legislation that was inspired by the tragic loss of Gabby Petito and other victims of domestic violence whose lives would have been saved by providing law enforcement with a very important tool that was designed to help them to identify victims who are most at risk for intimate partner homicide. Lethality assessments save lives by enabling law enforcement to identify victims at high risk of serious injury or, unfortunately, death by their intimate partners. In addition to providing a life-saving tool to law enforcement statewide, the legislation ensures that victims are empowered with resources to stay safe and to help lessen the danger of their health and safety. By focusing on prevention, we can save the lives of victims before it's too late. This legislation seeks to reduce these statistics, and I'll share a couple right now. According to a report in 2021, of the estimated 4,970 female victims of murder and non-negligent manslaughter in 2021, data reported by law enforcement agencies indicate that 1/3, or 34%, were killed by an intimate partner. By comparison, about 6% of the 17,970 males murdered that year were victims of intimate partner homicide. This legislation seeks to reduce these statistics, but also by supporting our law enforcement officers as they respond to these calls. The information that they collect is included in a tool that they currently use, which is called a domestic incident report, and it includes information about the victim, the alleged offender, and the details of the incident. The officer, when responding, will also provide victims with numbers to local, on-the-ground resources and agency supports with regards to addressing domestic violence. Based on the assessment, the officer may also file for an extreme risk protection order if there is credible information suggesting a likelihood of serious harm. There are other states who have passed this legislation. Maryland was one of the first states in 2005 to establish a statewide lethality assessment. Florida and Utah have also established this as a tool, and it is my hope that our body, and most certainly in the Assembly, and I want to thank my Assembly sponsor, Assemblymember Clark, for advancing this legislation in the Assembly. I proudly vote aye, and I encourage my colleagues to do the same. And I want to thank our Senate Majority Leader for continuing to lead on important issues like this in our body. Thank you.
Senator Webb to be recorded in the affirmative. Senator Rollison to explain his vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank Senator Webb for bringing this bill back. This is a common sense bill that gives the tools, as Senator Webb has alluded to law enforcement asking these questions which determine risk, the risk factor for a victim. And I can tell you that when I was in the county legislature, 2010, 2011, we actually did this in Dutchess County. It was a groundbreaking thing. And it needs to be done everywhere because these questions determine risk that sometimes victims of domestic violence and personal intimate violence, they're not thinking about that. And when you have the opportunity to connect a victim with an advocate to develop a safety plan, because ultimately many of these abusers are not going to be held forever. They're going to be back in a community, and they can victimize and unfortunately terrorize their victims, which causes trauma which has a whole other effect on someone's life and their family's life. And then, yes, of course, there are the domestic violence homicides that maybe if these questions were asked, that victim would know that they have to make a safety plan, and maybe they actually have to leave to go someplace safe. So thank you, Senator Webb, and I proudly vote aye. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Rollison to be recorded in the affirmative. Announce the results.
Ayes 57.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 406, Senate Print 2416 by Senator Parker, enactment of the Public Service Law.
Read the last section.
Section 6, this action will take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Giannaris Kruger, Ort, Stewart-Cousins-White.
Senator Parker to explain his vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. I first want to thank our illustrious leader, Andrea Stewart-Cousins, and the staff for putting together this package of legislation that deals with domestic violence and intimate partner violence. Really, really critical issue. Oftentimes, these kinds of crimes and just against humanity are many times not even reported, right? And oftentimes people feel stuck and don't know where to go. And so it's important in our leadership that we recognize and be the voice for those who don't have voices. And many times it's not necessarily just the physical aspects of the abuse that is important. It's things like being able to track and intimidate people. This particular bill allows folks who are in utility contracts or many times phone contracts to break those contracts so that their abusers cannot continue to track their movements and terrorize them. But this also speaks to the fact that much of what we have to do still has not gone done. And really want to use this moment to call upon not just the Senate, but also the Assembly and the Governor to bring forth legislation on coercive control. I have really important bills, the first one actually written in any legislature in the country. We have still failed to bring it to the floor here and pass it and make it law. But every single day we have victims of domestic violence who are not being protected simply because the abuse they're going through is not physical, but it's mental and psychological and not necessarily behavioral. And so we need to deal with that, as well as legislation I have called the Phoenix Act, which is a comprehensive bill to address some of these issues. And so as I'm happy that this bill is coming forward, and I want to thank my colleagues for voting aye on it, there's still so much to be done. Let's do coercive control. Let's do the Phoenix Act. Thank you.
Senator Parker to be recorded in the affirmative. Announce the results.
Ayes 57.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 454, Senate Print 3236A by Senator Cooney, enactment of the Education Law.
Read the last act.
Section 2, this action will take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Dabo, Giannaris Kruger, Ort, Stewart-Cousins-White.
Announce the results.
Ayes 57.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 467, Senate Print 450 by Senator Hoyman Siegel, enactment of the Real Property Tax Law.
Read the last section.
Section 3, this action will take effect on the 60th day, it shall become a law.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Giannaris Kruger, Ort, Stewart-Cousins-White.
Announce the results.
In relation to calendar 467, voted in the negative are Senators Ashby, Borrello, Kazari Fitzpatrick, Chan, Gallivan, Griffo, Helming, Lanza, Martins, Patera, Murray, Oberacker, O'Mara, Palumbo, Rhodes, Rollison, Skoufis, Steck, Tedisco, Wozik, Weber, and White. Ayes 35, nays 22.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 479, Senate Print 879A by Senator May, an act to amend the Agriculture and Markets Law.
Read the last section.
Section 6, this action will take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Giannaris Kruger, Ort, Stewart-Cousins-White.
Senator May to explain her vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in gratitude to my colleagues for voting for the Garden Protection Act. The reality is that for a lot of us, the most significant impact we may have on our local ecosystem has to do with how we manage our lawns and gardens. But it's also the case that in many communities, people have very little choice about what they can do. So this This simply says that people should have the right to grow food or to create pollinator habitat in their yards around their house, which is something that could be really important for people's food security, but also for pollinators all across the state. So I'm proud that we are passing this bill, and I vote aye.
Senator May to be recorded in the affirmative. Senator Martins to explain his vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be voting no on this bill. You know, I have some deep concerns about the idea that every person can effectively plant whatever they want on their front lawn, their side yards, or their rear yards in local communities. And I understand the sponsors' will to have a bill that will preempt local communities from being able to make those decisions globally. But I grew up in a community that is 40 by 100 and 50 by 100 lots. And when you live in close proximity with other people in houses in our suburban communities and some of our less dense urban communities, the reality is we all have to live together. And so we have to allow our local communities and our municipalities the ability to determine when there's a nuisance or not. And those decisions are made locally. And when we take those rights away from a municipality to maintain a certain order with regard to the community, we're doing an injustice to the entire community, and we're doing an injustice to the members of the community who moved into that community expecting that that would be there. Now, the sponsor has said that each community can pass laws to regulate that individually, but just think about what that means, Mr. President, when it comes to a community having to define what can or can't be planted and how far back from each setback that has to be. One person's garden is another person's tangle, and I'm concerned that we will be prioritizing one and not the other. I'll be voting no.
Senator Martins to be recorded in the negative. Announce the results.
In relation to Counter 479, voted in the negative are Senators Martins, C. Ryan, and Walzig. Ayes 54, nays 3.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 499, Senate Print 54 by Senator Fernandez, enactment of the penal law.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this action will take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Ginaris Kruger, Ort, Stewart-Cousins-White.
Senator Fernandez to explain her vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. Right now, New York law does not protect people who are sexually assaulted while voluntarily drunk or high. Unless they were drugged without their knowledge, the law says they could still consent, even if they were too impaired to say that they could, even if they were too impaired to stand or speak clearly. This bill fixes this by saying that if someone is too intoxicated to consent and a reasonable person should have known, it's still a crime. This change helps survivors get justice they deserve. Justice should not hinge on how a survivor became incapacitated. Our laws must reflect that a person who is too impaired to consent, regardless of how they arrived at that state, deserves protection and not dismissal. This legislation corrects a long-standing failure in our legal system and affirms a basic principle that consent must be knowing, clear, and freely given. I thank this conference for continually supporting this bill and for championing a critical package standing with survivors across New York. I proudly vote aye.
Senator Fernandez to be recorded in the affirmative. Announce the results.
Ayes 57.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 536, Senate Print 1015 by Senator Brute, enact to amend the state's powers and trust law.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this action will take effect on the 180th day. It shall become a law.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Ginaris Kruger, Ort, Stewart-Cousins-White.
Senator Brooke to explain her vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. I stand here today to vote aye on my bill S-1015, which concerns elder abuse. I'd like to thank all of the co-sponsors who have helped carry this bill, and especially the Rochester residents who championed this back home. Elder abuse is a national concern. It affects millions of people every year. And according to the American Journal of Public Health, nearly 1 in 10 older adults will experience elder abuse. But it's often a silent, hidden problem that robs older adults of their dignity and livelihoods. It's because this abuse can take so many different forms, ranging from physical abuse to financial exploitation. And it can happen anywhere by anyone. According to the National Institute on Aging, the mistreatment of older adults is just as common from family members or caregivers as it is from strangers. and amounted to a total loss of $28 billion each year from our seniors. This legislation seeks to restore elder justice in this way because for too long our older adults have suffered as victims of fraud, exploitation, and neglect. Passing this bill will prohibit an individual convicted of a crime involving elder abuse from inheriting their victim's estate. We can prevent elder abuse by making it clear that those who stand to gain from the death of an older adult will no longer be able to do so in this way. I proudly vote aye. Thank you.
Senator Brooke to be recorded in the affirmative. Announce the results.
Ayes 57.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 554, Assembly number 2123A by Assemblymember Berger, enactment of civil service law.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this act shall take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Gianaris Kruger, Ort, Cousins-White.
Announce the results.
Ayes 57.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 555, Senate Print 596 by Senator Hinchey, enactment to amend the executive law.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this act shall take effect on the 1st of July.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Gianaris Kruger, Ort, Cousins-White.
Senator Murray to explain his vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to thank the sponsor for this. This is a bill that frankly, I'm surprised it has not been signed into law yet. You know, we do enough things to cause problems for our businesses in this state. This is a small step where we can help. This is women and minority-owned businesses. I've heard stories of, I had a woman come up to me and said, listen, I got my designation. I got certified as a MWBE. I came up for renewal. There's been absolutely no change to my business, no change in ownership, no change in management, and yet I was denied recertification. That makes absolutely no sense. Just another obstacle thrown in the way of our, many times, small businesses. Passing this bill will remove that obstacle. It is a common sense bill, and that's why I'm proudly voting aye. Thank you.
Senator Murray to be recorded in the affirmative. Announce the results.
Ayes 57.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 679, Senate Print 3519 by Senator Scarcella-Stanton, enactment of the penal law.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this act shall take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Gianaris Kruger, Ort, Cousins-White.
Senator Scarcella-Stanton to explain her vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today we take an important step forward to protect New Yorkers from a growing and dangerous form of harassment. As technology continues to evolve, so do methods used by predators to stalk, intimidate, or control their victims. These people have exploited loopholes in our laws using GPS devices, cell phones, apps, and other technologies to track someone's movements or spy on their property, often without the victim's knowledge or consent. Today's stalkers can follow you from your pocket, your car, even your home without you ever knowing. This legislation updates New York's definition of stalking in the fourth degree to reflect this new digital age. With the passage of this bill, we are making it clear. Using technology to terrorize someone is just as serious and damaging as any other form of harassment. And here in New York, it will not be tolerated. Until now, there has been no clear legal protections in place to stop this behavior, and no path forward for justice. Many perpetrators have faced no consequences, but we deserve better in New York. We're adapting our laws to meet the moment and reaffirming our commitment to protecting the privacy, safety, and peace of mind of all New Yorkers. Thank you, and I proudly vote aye.
Senator Scarcella-Stanton to be recorded in the affirmative. Announce the results.
Ayes 57.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 746, Senate Print 561 by Senator Kruger, enactment of the Administrative Code of the City of New York.
Read the last section.
Section 4, this act shall take effect on the 30th day, it shall become a law.
Call the roll.
Dabo, Gianaris Kruger, Ort, Cousins-White.
Announce the results.
In relation to calendar 746, voted in the negative. Senator Walzett, ayes 56, nays. Also, Senator Borrello.
Announce the results.
In In relation to calendar 746, voted in the negative are Senators Borrello, O'Mara, and Walzek. Ayes 54, nays 3.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 773, Senate Print 1353A by Senator Clear, enactment of the general business law.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this act shall take effect on the 90th day, it shall become a law.
Call the roll.
Dabo, GNR's Kruger, Ort, Stewart-Cousins, White.
Senator Clear to explain her vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. The consequences that a survivor of domestic violence, elder abuse, or other forms of exploitation must face are often complex, deep-seated, and extend to all areas of the survivor's life, including their finances. Almost every case of abuse has an economic component to it, and the average survivor is often put into thousands of dollars of debt by their abusers. This bill sets up a formalized process so that any survivor who was the victim of a coerced debt may apply to have the collection activities suspended pending review of documentation that the debt was in fact coerced. In the ideal, after the review process, the survivor will no longer be responsible for the debt. In those cases where after review, a negative finding of coercion is rendered, both an appeal and a private right of action are possible avenues for redress for the survivor. In all, this bill ultimately seeks a balanced approach where survivors are allowed to grow, heal, and move on with their lives, and are not burdened for the rest of their lives by debt incurred under coercion. I proudly vote aye.
Senator Clear to be recorded in the affirmative. Announce the results.
In relation to calendar 773, voted in the negative are Senators Borrello, Kazari Fitzpatrick, Chan, Gallivan, Lanza, Matera, Oberacker, O'Mara, Steck, Walzek, and White. Ayes 46, nays 11.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 781, Senate Print 1665 by Senator Harcum, enactment of the Vehicle and Traffic Law.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this act shall take effect on the 180th day, it shall become a law.
Call the roll.
Adabo, GNR's Kruger, Ort, Stewart-Cousins, White.
Announce the results.
In relation to calendar 781, voted in the negative are Senators Borrello, Chan, Gallivan, Griffo, and Oberacker. Ayes 52, nays 5.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 899, Senate Print 607 by Senator Stavisky, enactment of the Education Law.
Read the last section.
Section 15, this act shall take effect 18th month after it shall become a law.
Call the roll.
Adabo, GNR's Kruger, Ort, Stewart-Cousins, White.
Announce the results.
Ayes 57.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 956, Senate Print.
The bill will be laid aside for the day. With that, Senator Liu, that completes the reading of today's calendar. Senator Liu, with that completes the reading of today's calendar.
Mr. President, please go to the reading of the controversial calendar.
Secretary will ring the bell. Secretary will read.
Calendar number 256, Senate Print 429 by Senator Salazar, enact to amend the executive law.
Senator Lanza, why do you rise?
Mr. President, I believe there's an amendment at the desk. I waive the reading of that amendment and ask that you recognize Senator Steck.
Thank you, Senator Lanza. Upon review of the amendment in accordance with Rule 6, Section 4B, I rule it non-germane and out of order.
Accordingly, Mr. President, I appeal the ruling of the chair and ask that Senator Steck be heard on that appeal.
The appeal has been made and recognized. Senator Steck may be heard.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to appeal the ruling of the chair. The proposed amendment is germane to the bill at hand because the bill at hand relates to sexual assaults occurring within correctional facilities, and this amendment increases the penalties for sexual assaults committed against corrections officers. Sexual assault is a serious issue, and when it occurs in our prisons, it must be taken seriously and thoroughly investigated and properly punished. That applies to all who are in our correctional facilities, not just our inmates. I wonder how many prosecutions of this sexual assaults in prisons have occurred in the last 5 years in New York State. I doubt very many. Since the implementation of the HALT Act, violence has surged in our prisons, and our dedicated corrections officer staff has never been or felt less safe. Inmates continue to commit acts of sexual violence against correctional officers, and these inmates believe that there will be no consequences for their conduct. And I'd ask everyone to go and review the press conference that was reported on that occurred here, bipartisan press conference, May 9th, 2023, where several female corrections officers came and made their cases and stories known. Instead of addressing the violent crisis within our prisons, this legislature continues to coddle criminals, demonize the corrections officers that risk their lives and well-being to keep those criminals and our communities safe, and ignore the valid pleas of corrections staff to finally step up and do something about the assaults and sexual violence that is committed against them. This proposed amendment seeks to right that wrong by ensuring that there are very real and severe punishments for inmates who commit heinous acts of sexual violence against our correction officers. For that reason, Mr. President, I strongly urge you to reconsider your ruling.
Thank you, Senator. I want to remind the House that the vote is on the procedures of the House and the ruling of the chair. Those in favor of overruling the chair signify by saying aye.
Aye.
A show of hands has been requested and so ordered. Announce the results.
Ayes 21.
The ruling of the chair stands and the bill in chief is before the House. Read the last section.
Section 3, this act shall take effect on the 180th day.
Senator Steck, why do you rise?
If the sponsor of the bill would yield for a few questions, please, Mr. President.
Will the sponsor yield?
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. President, the IG already has authorization to conduct investigations of this sort. So why is this bill necessary?
Through you, Mr. President, right now there is not a mechanism created by the Inspector General's office that would allow for incarcerated individuals to confidentially report sexual misconduct or sexual violence, and for the Inspector General's office to actually investigate those complaints.
Should continue to yield.
Will the sponsor yield?
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
Thank you, Mr. President. Why aren't corrections officers included in this bill? Sexual assault occurs in our prisons and is committed against both inmates and corrections officers. So why are COs admitted?
Mr. President, it is always serious when sexual assault is committed, regardless of who commits the sexual assault, who the perpetrator is, and who the victim is. However, a fundamental difference between incarcerated individuals and correction officers, as well as between incarcerated individuals and all of us in this chamber, is that incarcerated individuals do not have their liberty. Their communication with the outside world is, because they are incarcerated, controlled and monitored by docs. This is not true, rightly, of correction officers. If they are a victim of a crime, of a sexual assault, or if they were to witness a sexual assault, they have the ability to report that crime to state police. They also could, hypothetically, report it to the Inspector General's office, although I don't know why they would, because again, they have the ability to report the crime to state police, and as it has happened before, the state police would likely, arrest the individual, or if the individual is incarcerated, they could be charged and convicted, prosecuted, have time added to their sentence.
Will the sponsor yield?
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
Okay, well, again, I highly doubt that this has been prosecuted very often in this state. And as an aside, I've tried to get this kind of information, this data from docs, and while they seem to track everything else, they don't seem to track sexual assaults that occur in their facilities. But our incarcerated individuals already have a means to report incidents. So if we're adding another path for them, then despite the COs already having other mechanisms themselves, why not include corrections officers here to make this a parallel? The issue is we want the Inspector General to be tracking and investigating what's happening in our prisons. Why would we discriminate or segregate incarcerated from corrections officers if they're both suffering from sexual assaults?
And again, it is a fundamental difference between incarcerated individuals and correction officers, that incarcerated individuals do not have their liberty. They don't have the liberty to simply contact the state police if they are a victim of a sexual assault. I also just want to add that if we were to pass this legislation, it would take a step toward bringing docs into actual compliance with the Prison Rape Elimination Act, PREA. It requires that incarcerated people be provided at least one way to report abuse or harassment to an entity that is not part of the agency, so not just being able to report these crimes to DOC's Office of Special Investigations, OSI, and they also need to be able to report this abuse and have it be received and forwarded to an agency that is not part of DOCS and allows the incarcerated person to remain anonymous. That is not true under existing policy or law. Incarcerated people may use privileged correspondence, for example, to write to the State Commission of Correction, informing them if there is an alleged assault. And of course, the SCOC is a separate entity from DOCS. But however, if an incarcerated individual were to do that, they are required to write their name and return address on the envelope that they use to contact the SCOC. And in fact, the superintendent of a facility can authorize that privileged correspondent be read by staff. So all of this is to say that right now, without creating a mechanism for incarcerated individuals to anonymously make these reports to an entity that is independent from DOCS, New York is not in full compliance with PREA.
The sponsor continue to yield.
Will the sponsor yield?
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
Thank you, Mr. President. Whether to assist in drafting this bill or in general as the chair of the Crime Victims, Crime and Correction Committee, in 2022, you held a public hearing to investigate the sexual assaults impacting incarcerated individuals in DOCS. Your sponsor memo states, quote, multiple organizations and formerly incarcerated impacted individuals testified at this hearing, detailing specific incidents of sexual assault while incarcerated, most of which never received timely, appropriate, or adequate care or responses to grievances or reports filed against the individuals who assaulted them, end quote. Were sexual assaults impacting staff investigated during this hearing?
Through you, Mr. President, yes, absolutely. And in fact, correction officers, both in local correctional facilities and correction officers from state facilities testified at the hearing.
Sponsor continue to yield.
Sponsor yield.
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
So as the chair of the Corrections Committee, have you ever met with any COs to discuss their experiences with sexual assault in correctional facilities?
Through you, Mr. President, yes, I have.
Sponsor continue to yield.
Sponsor yield.
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
Can you say when those rose, or give a little background on what and when?
Sure. Through you, Mr. President, yes. I couldn't cite a date at this moment, but in this current year, I know that my office has met with correction officers about this issue and about other issues that they deal with in their workplace. On multiple occasions, I have met with, not just including the hearing that we held in 2022, but since then have met with correction officers to talk about their experiences. They were private meetings, so I shouldn't divulge more than that, but I did meet with them.
Will the sponsor yield?
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
In May 9th of 2023 here in the Capitol, there was a bipartisan, majority-led press conference here in the Capitol surrounding the issue of corrections officers concerned about sexual assaults in prisons where, again, as I mentioned previously, several female corrections officers came and shared their experiences. Were you present at that press conference, or did you meet with those corrections officers in the lead up to that press conference?
Through you, Mr. President, while I don't know that this is related to this bill in any way, I don't know where I was on May 9th, 2023, other than probably in the Capitol. I truly don't know if I was in attendance at that press conference.
For 2 more questions.
Will the sponsor yield?
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
Thank you. So as the chair of the Corrections Committee, are you open to holding a hearing to investigate the impacts of sexual assaults on corrections officers and civilian staff?
Through you, Mr. President, as Senator Steck knows, in 2022, I co-chaired a hearing that addressed sexual violence in correctional facilities and included testimony from correction officers who have been subject to sexual violence in correctional facilities. It was the first hearing of its kind that has ever been held in the history of the New York State Senate. I certainly wouldn't be opposed to holding a hearing like it. I also wouldn't be opposed to hearing testimony about this subject tomorrow when we are holding a hearing right here in the state capitol to discuss violence in our state prisons.
Sponsor, continue to yield for that final question.
Sponsor yield.
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
Thank you, Senator. So the hostile amendment to this bill today is Senate Bill 3517 by Senator Scarcella-Stanton, and it would make forcible touching of a corrections officer a Class E felony. Will you work with your colleague to see that CO protections like the one in her bill become law?
Through you, Mr. President, I will gladly discuss that with Senator Scarcella-Stanton, but I would argue that it is not germane to this bill, which is related to ensuring that incarcerated individuals who, again, don't currently have the ability to report, at least freely and anonymously report sexual violence committed against them, that they would be able to do so. So, yes, beyond the context of the bill before us today, I would certainly have that discussion with my colleague.
Thank you, Mr. President. On the bill.
Senator Steck on the bill.
You know, I'm not even a member of the Corrections Committee, but I do represent a lot of corrections officers. I have 7 correctional facilities in my Senate district, and I've been in and out of them a lot over the years, both as a senator and prior to that in the Assembly. And the consistent drumbeat that I've heard over the years, and especially since the passage and implementation of the HALT Act, about the concerns for their safety and the statistics and the stories and the injuries that I've seen to our corrections officers and staff, our employees, is astounding to me. To the point, again, and I apologize to sound like a broken record, but it's important. We're talking about people's lives and safety and a dangerous job. These folks violated the Taylor Act and took a 2-day-for-one penalty, and then on top of, under law, for violating that act by going out on an illegal strike. And then on top of that had its own employer and state government and the executive turn on it and retaliate and pile on with unnecessary and beyond what's required in the law punishments. Where thousands of COs left because they're concerned about their safety. And this was the first strike since 1979. It lasted 22 days. It is literally unprecedented in our state's history. It is certainly the most significant incident that's happened in corrections in the state since the riots at Attica. And we've been talking about it, and we're spending $100 million a month, according to the governor's budget office, on untrained, unqualified National Guard people instead of rehiring COs. And they're still working 12-hour shifts on and off and no end in sight. The staffing levels haven't gotten any better. I wonder why. And we've talked about it in the budget. We've had hostile amendments on it. No one in this chamber can be unaware of the failure of our correctional system right now, where inmate-on-inmate assaults have doubled in the last couple of years. Inmate on staff have doubled in the last couple of years. And this bill, who's against investigating and holding people accountable for sexual assaults in prison. But it doesn't go far enough because it addresses part of the problem. It talks about inmate-on-inmate assaults, but it ignores inmate-on COs and staff. And to bring this bill forward in the context of what's going on today in 2025 with all these prison safety issues and strikes and unprecedented problems in corrections, it just astounds me the majority's continued stubborn indifference to, and if not outright disregard for the safety of our COs and civilian staff is just deeply disturbing to me.
Are there any other senators wishing to be heard? Seeing and hearing none, debate is closed. The secretary will ring the bell. Senator Liu.
Upon consent, we've agreed to restore this bill to the non-controversial calendar.
Read the last section.
Section 3, this act shall take effect on the 180th day and shall become a law.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Giannaris Kruger, Ort, Sue Cousins White.
Senator Helming to explain her vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill fails to address the need to conduct thorough and impartial investigations into all reported incidents of sexual assaults within our correctional facilities. It was several months ago when the Bipartisan Legislative Women's Caucus held a meeting, and we heard from several female corrections officers, not only about the sexual harassment and assaults they endured, but about all of the assaults and attacks that they have endured. And these all happened, again, as state employees in our state facilities. The women shared how they have been traumatized and scarred for life. That wasn't so surprising to me based on what they have endured. But what was surprising to me that came out of those meetings is how their families, their children, have also been traumatized by those attacks. These women, they begged the female legislators who are members of the Legislative Women Caucus to take action, to do something. But here we are months later, and before us, there's a bill that covers inmates only. This bill should be expanded to include those who work and serve in our state's correctional facilities. And Mr. President, until it does, I vote no.
Senator Helming to be recorded in the negative. Senator Salazar to explain her vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. After our state enacted the Adult Survivors Act in 2022, more than 750 women came forward to take legal action regarding sexual assaults they experienced in New York State prisons. During just the following year-long period in which survivors could file for civil damages under the ASA, over 1,550 cases were filed by formerly incarcerated individuals alleging that they had suffered sexual abuse in New York State prisons. These assaults not only include sexual violence, but also severe retaliation and threats when survivors attempted to report the abuse. In fact, the Sylvia Rivera Law Project and Take Root Justice found that 75% of formerly incarcerated respondents reported experiencing or witnessing firsthand at least one instance of sexual violence by correction officers when they were incarcerated. 2/3 of those who reported their assaults faced retaliation, including physical violence, property destruction, being written up on false charges, and being denied meals. As the data shows, the process of relying on DOC's OSI to investigate its own staff when reports of sexual misconduct are made against them is deeply ineffective. Complaints are largely unaddressed and frequently result in retaliation. We need an independent entity to investigate these reports in New York instead. Without meaningful accountability, sexual violence will continue in our state prisons. Today, I urge my colleagues to once again vote in favor of this bill, which would authorize the State Inspector General to confidentially receive and investigate complaints of sexual assault in DOC's facilities. All survivors of sexual assault deserve justice, regardless of where the assault occurred. The feckless system that allows this to continue must be changed, and this bill is desperately needed in order to begin to achieve that. I vote aye.
Senator Salazar to be recorded in the affirmative. Announce the results.
In relation to calendar 256, voting in the negative are Senators Borrello, Helming, Walzig, and White. Ayes 53, nays 4.
The bill is passed. Senator Liu, that completes the reading of today's calendar.
Mr. President, is there any further business at the desk?
There is no further business at the desk.
Then I move to adjourn until tomorrow, Wednesday, May 14th at 3 p.m.
On motion, the Senate stands adjourned until Wednesday, May 14th at 3 p.m.